Hi guys, happy Wednesday. Can't wait for all our Zooms today. Alright, here we go. Chapter 5. It's called A Clue in the Muck. The Aldens are going canoeing with their new friend they've met, the Native American, Irene Ascola. Here we go. Chapter 5. A Clue in the Muck. Irene Ascola was waiting for the Aldens when they pulled into the Muskokie village the next morning. The canoe ramp is this way, she said. Today she wore jeans, a long-sleeved t-shirt, and sneakers. It's good you all wore pants and long sleeves, she said, as they approached the landing. It's very buggy in the glades. We're practically coated in insect spray, Jessie said. Plus, we brought along extra, just in case. She held up a pack that contained water, sunscreen, insect repellent, and other supplies. The lightweight fiberglass canoes bobbed in the water at the dock. The canoes looked odd, Henry thought. These canoes were nearly flat-bottomed and wider than the canoes he had paddled on lakes. Our people used to make dugout cypress canoes, Irene explained, but we have to conserve the cypress trees, she grinned. Also, these are easier to handle. Grandfather assigned the canoes. I'll take one with Benny. Irene, you go with Jessie, and Henry will take the third one with Violet. Henry was looking around. Where are the oars? Irene giggled. No oars. We don't sit down and paddle these canoes. The sawgrass and lily pads are too thick. We stand up and pull the canoes through the water. Well, I'm game, said Grandfather, stepping into the canoe. He helped Benny in and then took the pack Jessie handed him. The others climbed into their canoes and found holes in the bottoms. Irene untied the ropes and hopped into her canoe. Stand at each end, she instructed them, pulling her and Jessie's canoe away from the dock first. These boats won't tip over easily, but it'll take you a while to get used to pulling instead of paddling. We aren't going anywhere, Benny called back to Grandfather. That's because we're not pulling in the same direction, Grandfather said, laughing. I'm trying to push the canoe forward, and you're trying to make it go backward. Irene came alongside their canoe and gave them a push. Now you've got it. Benny, you're doing great. As the canoes moved slowly down the river, Irene explained that they were headed west into the river of grass. Why are we going this way? Henry asked Irene. This is where I see Ranger Belden a lot, Irene answered. He has his own canoe. Apparently, he hasn't been to work in the last several days, Grandfather said. He and Benny were finally catching up to the others. Do you think he might have come into the Everglades alone and is lost? It's possible, Irene said. Ranger Belden knows the glades pretty well, but there are still places no one has ever seen, so even someone who knows the hidden places can get lost. Jessie remembered what Melanie Harper had said. Do you know something about an obsession Andrew has? Irene wrinkled her brow under her baseball cap. I'm not sure. Maybe the Florida Panther, Irene said. Panthers, Benny said with awe. Those big wildcats? Yes, said Irene. Not too many people know about our wildcats. We read about panthers in our nature books, said Violet. They only live in the Everglades, right? Which are shrinking every day, Irene said, shaking her head sadly. Hear the cars? We aren't very far from the highway. That highway and the canals men dug to drain the swamp have made the glades smaller. Houses and stores and farms steal land from the glades. And less land means fewer homes for animals and birds, Grandfather put in. That's why the Everglades National Park is here, to protect and preserve what's left. Henry wanted to get back to the missing ranger. You say Andrew Belden is interested in Florida Panthers? Ranger Belden worries about the panthers. He's afraid they will disappear altogether. It's happened before. Other animals have become extinct, said Irene. Crocodiles are also very endangered. Benny glanced around excitedly. Around the still water. There are crocodiles in here? Very, very few, Irene informed him. It's rare to see a crocodile, and even rarer to see a panther. My family is of the Panther clan. The Muskogee belong to different family clans, like the Bird, Wind, or Otter clans. We members of the Panther clan understand the beauty of the panther. Ranger Belden does too. Just then they came upon a small island. White herons stood in shallow water near the island, stalking small fish and frogs. The trees that grew on the island were the strangest Benny had ever seen. One tree seemed to stand up on two legs out of the water. Are you okay, buddy? All right, come on, sit down on the chair. Those trees look like people, he exclaimed. My ancestors thought so too, Irene told him with a smile. They are mangrove trees. My people call them the walking trees. The roots are like legs. Then she explained that the island wasn't really an island, but a hammock. A tree would take root, seeds drifting downstream would cling to the mangrove's roots. Over the years, dirt gathered, and more plants and trees grew until a humped mound rose out of the water. They pulled close to the mangrove hammock. Violet stopped to take pictures of the wild orchids growing right on the sides of the trees. Oh, look, Jessie declared. She pointed. And here's the family pulling down the river. You can see Grandpa and Benny and Henry and Violet. We don't get to see Irene and Jessie, but we get to see a pretty good picture of what's going on there in the glades and how swampy it is. It's very cool. I've never been there, but that looks really awesome. And she pointed to a colorful snail on a tree. The conical shell swirled in shades of gray, blue, beige, and lavender. Bullfrogs leaped among the lily pads. Bottle green dragonflies skimmed over the surface. A harmless water snake swam between Henry and Irene's canoes. Benny could hardly keep still. He didn't want to miss anything. Grandfather took his hat off to swat at the mosquitoes. You're never alone here, are you? He joked. Not for a second, Irene agreed. Though sometimes your companion is too small to see. As long as they kept moving, the insects weren't too bad. Irene told them to expect bugs, but Jessie couldn't believe the dense clouds of mosquitoes and tiny no-see-ums. Is this a place Andrew might stop? Henry asked Irene. She nodded. Since he came this way, he probably stopped here often. Ranger Belden was always looking for any sign of a panther. Have you ever seen one? Benny asked, awed that the wildcats could be lurking in the tangle of the undergrowth. Irene shook her head. People look for years and never see a panther. My father saw one once when he was a little boy, about your age, Benny, but only that one time. Let's tie up our canoes and walk around, Grandfather suggested. Maybe we'll see some sign that Andrew has been here. Irene directed them to a mangrove tree with extra long roots. They tied up their canoes and waded in the shallow water to the hammock. The water is so warm, Violet remarked. I could take a bath in it. That's because it's summer, said Irene. In the winter and during the rainy season in the spring, the water is cooler. Benny scrambled up the side of the hammock using a vine like a rope. This place is neat. It took the others longer to make their way through the Caribbean pines, saw palmettos, and live oaks. Henry was amazed at the variety of ferns growing right in the bark of the trees. The Everglades was a truly magical place. What is this? He asked Irene, pointing to a plant with yellow and orange flowers. We call that kunai, Irene replied. We grate the root to make flour after it's dry. Then we add water and make a kind of cereal, sofki. It's really good. Jessie looked up at the sky and watched a huge bird lazily circle overhead. The bird could see a lot better than they could. Where's Andrew Belden? She asked the bird silently. And then she thought of something. Irene, she began. Do you know of a ranger named Melanie Harper? Irene frowned slightly. A little. She's blonde. And pretty, isn't she? I think she and Andrew were dating. That's what I thought, Jessie said. But whenever we talk to Melanie, she acts as if she doesn't care about Andrew at all. They are not really friends anymore, Irene said. Andrew came to the village one day with my books. He looked sad and I asked him what was wrong. He told me about what had happened with Melanie Harper. Not paying attention to where she was going, Violet tripped over a mangrove root. She caught herself before she fell, and then she saw it. Hey guys, she cried, look at this! In the soft, squishy mud was part of a shoe print. Grandfather leaned over. Good work, Violet. That's the heel of somebody's boot. Benny poked his finger into the spongy mud. What is this stuff? It's called muck, Irene said. Sometimes the muck can be dangerous. If you fall into it, it's hard to climb out. This might be a clue, Henry stated. Jessie, did you bring your casting kit? Right in the pack, she replied, digging out the small sack of plaster of Paris, a tin dish, a jar of petroleum jelly, and a metal ring. Benny got water to mix the plaster in the tin dish, while Violet greased the inside of the metal ring with petroleum jelly. Irene watched in fascination. You are like real detectives, she said, as Jessie carefully placed the ring around the print. We've done this before, Jessie said, on another mystery case. Henry stirred the plaster until it was thick. Then he poured it over the ring, covering the heel print. This stuff dries pretty fast, he said. They waited until the plaster had set. Then Violet lifted the ring with the perfect cast of the print inside. She stared at it. That's odd, she said. There's a mark like a V on the sole. A clue, Benny declared. Maybe this is Andrew's shoe print. We might be on his trail. Violet gazed into the wild, noisy Everglades. She hoped Benny was right. Chapter 6 is called More Secrets. Alright, some of us got some pretty good predictions for Chapter 5 there, huh? Some of us got some things right, so let's see if you guys can get some things right for More Secrets, Chapter 6. What do we think's going to happen? Is the print Andrew Belden's shoe print or not? You guys got to let us know what you think. Alright, we'll see you tomorrow for some Zooms. I can't wait. Wednesday Zooms. I'll see 1st and 2nd grade in the morning. I'll see 3rd and 5th graders in the afternoon. Have a great day, guys. Bye.